freshly brewed and ready to go. You're listening to Espression with Ishita and Alejandro.
No script, no filters, just two friends and a lot of caffeine.
Welcome to today's conversation. Welcome back to Espression and welcome to the final episode of our three-part series on AI and psychotherapy.
Over the last two episodes, we've talked about how technology is moving from a basic tool to a digital companion that people lean on for emotional support.
Today, we are looking straight into the future. We aren't just talking about smarter chatbots anymore. We're looking at a world where tech is built right into our physical environment, tracking everything from our tone of voice to our facial expressions.
We are diving into the big questions ahead. Who is responsible if a machine gives harmful advice? Are we accidentally creating a world where talking to a real human becomes a luxury for the rich, while everyone else gets a program placeholder?
We are bringing together tech competition, privacy concerns, and cultural biases to see how we can handle this massive change safely.
Let's dial it in. Okay, so welcome back to Espression. Welcome back to episode 3 of AI and Psychotherapy. For this episode, we are going to talk about the future of AI and psychotherapy. And we've kind of briefly touched upon some of these topics or some of these themes in the previous episode, but now we want to do an entire episode just to close off the series, just talking a little bit about what's in the pipeline, what's in the future, what's ahead. Now, honestly, and I was thinking about this before, that with a topic like AI and therapy, it feels like a lot of the profound impact that this topic is going to have is mostly to do with the human aspect and the therapy aspect of it. From the AI point of view, it's more like, okay, this is a machine, this is a system, and you make a system. But the questions and the deep thoughts and the insights, I think, are mostly going to come from the human side of it. And yeah, like that's just my way of looking at it. I think that's what I've gotten from the past two episodes. I don't know, Ishita, what do you think about this? Do you have anything to add on?
Yeah, I think the reason why we are thinking more from the people point of view and the therapy side is because, psychology and psychotherapy has been here for a bit longer than AI. AI is relatively newer. When we're still learning how to use AI in different ways, and we're exploring all these opportunities, but when you think about psychotherapy, you think that there's years of research and practice that has gone into this field. There's a certain way that the field works, and then with this new entrant of AI, we're seeing all these changes, and so I think that's also a reason why there's more discussion on the therapy side, because it's like something old and something well established is being challenged. It's being, it's about exploring it in a new way. And as we've discussed so far, there's pros and cons to it. It is a mix of different things, and that is precisely what we're going to discuss in this episode about what the future is going to look like. With the way things are moving, it is quite likely that instead of us debating whether it's AI that's better or is it human therapy that's better, but it might be some sort of an integration of both that might work, given how things are going. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with this. I think, as we've kind of touched upon this previous episode, in other domains as well, you see that there's this conciliation between AI and this way of doing things in the past. And at first, I think with every new advancement that comes along, that when it comes to technology has enabled a lot of possibilities that before you could only see in science fiction movies. But I would say that the unique thing about tech is that it has impacted so many domains. And I would find it quite interesting that, for example, something like computers and software, which in the 70s and 80s were limited to people in labs, people in research who were like, oh, this is a machine that's going to help us do our calculations better, are now used by pretty much everyone in every discipline in every field. And I think AI is definitely one of these moments that will affect humanity and will affect so many fields that, and will even create new fields that we're still not sure what they're going to be like. But the challenge and the key is in integration, I agree, and in evolution. And one of the things that I really do believe in, and when people say, oh, this is going to affect so many people's livelihoods, that it's going to erase jobs. Uh, I think that's the wrong way of looking at it. I think the wrong way of looking at it, you shouldn't be looking at, oh, this is going to replace me. You should be looking at, okay, how do I understand this so that I can A, do what I'm doing in a better and faster way, and B, how do I get ahead and understand where things are going? Because one thing is you end up doing the same thing over and over and over again, but there's this huge revolution at your doorstep that you need to be ready for. And I would say, okay, change your focus. Look at what else can I learn? How can I understand this better to use it and to get ahead of the curve? And this resisting change, I think, is the driving force behind a lot of the fear that we're seeing in this field and in the tech field in general.
I agree with that. I think any kind of advancement is something that should be given a fair chance. It shouldn't be outrightly rejected or just out of, like you said, fear that it's going to challenge our preconceived notions, that we're just going to reject it and not even consider how it might actually benefit it. And where this is why these conversations like that we're having right now, it's really important to have these conversations so we actually think about it and think how can AI help us, and in therapy, and like how can therapy improve with AI, and also just knowing where to draw the line, where to have those boundaries where we don't let AI basically take over the whole process, and make sure that all the ethics are, we're being ethical in a way,
Exactly,
all
yeah.
those sorts of things. But definitely I think there is a place for AI in therapy already, and it is already being used quite well. And that is with, like, I think we mentioned this in the last episode as well, with like note taking and just like spotting patterns, and trying to all these collect like all these data points on the person who is seeking psychological support. Those are things that can be helpful, along with that human insight that comes from an actual therapist, because then you can take all this data and you can assess it and see, okay, well, you've been showing certain like emotions throughout the day, or there's certain things that have been going on, and there are certain patterns emerging from your behavior that we can work on as well. So I think that way, like, AI is already being integrated, and now there's also talk of using AI as a companion in between therapy sessions, which,
Mm-hmm.
again, I think there's a lot that can be said about that in terms of right and wrong. But I think it's not a very bad idea for cases which are maybe very extreme, who require more support. I still think that there should be that boundary with your therapist and with that therapy process, where you only engage with that process at a fixed time, and then you go and take those skills into your life and practice them by yourself. So, in between check ins could maybe be used as a data collection point instead of an intervention point. But nonetheless, that is also something that AI can do, and something that is quite interesting to think about in terms of integrating both AI and therapy. And yeah, do you
It's
know of
actually quite
any
interesting.
AI tools that are
uh
being used?
I hadn't really read about the whole idea of using AI as what, like in between therapy sessions. So like, how does that work? Is it more like monitoring data points or?
Yeah, so that's exactly, what is sort of unclear about it. It's an idea that, I'm not sure that if it's actually been used yet, but I did read about it as an idea, which is like sort of checking in between therapy sessions,
Mm-hmm.
because therapists can't do that because, well, they've got their own lives to live. But then again, there's also with that, it comes to what exactly that AI is doing. If it's sort of checking in and collecting data about, say, mood, like how is your mood today? Like how many times did you face like XYZ, whatever. That can just be extra data for the therapist to work with. But if the AI is acting as a makeshift therapist in between sessions, then that would, I think, create like a dependency issue, because the whole point of therapy is for you to
Yeah,
go
exactly.
into therapy, explore things and take those things with you into your life and then integrate it into your life by yourself the way it works for you.
I think the challenge as
So, yeah.
well is going to be like, and we see this because, I mean, of course, I'd say everything in life in excess is eventually negative. It's an issue. And I think it's kind of like computers. Like, a computer is a tool that gets us, like, it helps us so much with it connects us to the world. It allows us to get tasks done. It allows for a lot of opportunities that 20, 30 years ago you can only dream of. But if you spend, I don't know, what, 8 to 10 hours a day on a computer, and you forget about your health, your physical health, your emotional health, it starts to become a negative aspect. And I think, with like we talked about last episode, we talked about validation, uh, and I think we even mentioned a little bit about dependency. But I think it's that, okay, but what if every little decision that you make, you're gonna have to ask a chatbot, like, what am I supposed to
Hmm.
do? Am I supposed to buy 2 or 3 pineapples this week? Uh, and instead of like you become so stressed with these little things, and
Yeah.
that's, I think, it's part of like a potential issue. It's like, if everyone gets access to this on-demand brain, then do we become basically just like dependent on asking every little thing to it? Like, do you think that
Yeah.
from a like a mind point of view, is that, like, how does that work? Like, for example, like, because I know with therapy, you're like, the therapist is supposed to empower a person, give them the tools to overcome life's challenges, right? But then how do you deal with like patients who ask the question of, okay, what am I supposed to do here in this specific situation? Like, because as we said before, so these chatbots are supposed to they give you a straight up answer, right? But that's not the way that it should be done, right? In terms of the whole
Hmm.
therapy process structure.
Yeah. I mean, if a person is going to an AI chatbot and asking, well, this is the situation I'm in, what do I do? That is not really therapy. That's literally asking for advice. And that is something that a therapist will never, ever answer for you directly. If you go to your therapist and say, this is what I'm facing, what do you think I should do? Your therapist will give you an answer that you do not expect. They will never
Okay.
give you a solution. They will never say, well, okay, I think you should go and do this. They will always explore what's come up. They will challenge your question with another question, maybe. There's always going to be something that so because the therapist is not just listening to your words, they're going beyond what you're saying and trying to understand where those things are stemming from. So that kind of process is something that I still believe AI cannot replace, because it is something that comes through a lot of training. It's not just human instinct, although human instinct is a big aspect, that we do have that sort of empathy towards other humans because we ourselves are humans, but also the years of like training and exploring, and just not just through textbooks but also through your conversations and meeting people and seeing different, say, cases all through your career with like people with different clinical presentations and different life problems and stuff. You do gain that experience over the years. And so when a client comes to you and says, I'm stuck in this situation. What do I do? An experienced therapist will never just
Yeah,
give
just give
them
you
the
the
answer.
answer.
They will
Mm-hmm.
always dig deeper. They will always ask where this is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And they're always going to explore it further so that you come to the answer by yourself at some point, or you realize maybe that question itself shouldn't be something you should be thinking about.
And
So there's definitely a lot of that. Yeah.
so here it makes me curious, like, what do you think is the more likely future? That we become a lot more self-aware and curious about asking those hard questions? Or do you think that we would just go for the easier route and ask directly, okay, what do we do? Okay, do this, and then just don't question. But I don't know, from like a sociological, I guess, prediction point of view, like, do you think that these tools will wake people up, or will they just keep them trapped in Plato's cave?
That's interesting. I think with the current state the AI tools are in, it is not really possible to achieve that sort of challenge through AI. I think right now, the way these tools work is basically like you put in all the information you have and then it just detects it and
And it just gives you a
gives you an answer
solution.
based on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's very like solution focused, very like to the point. And I think it does create that sort of dependency where the person is like, okay, let me just ask my AI chatbot best friend
Yeah.
what they think. And
Mm-hmm.
it's basically like going to your best friend for everything, where it's like, what do you think I should do? Like, to help me out, which is fine in some situations,
Except your
but
best
some
friend
things
is
you need to.
super confident about what they're saying, and they claim to have the entire world's knowledge, and will definitely try to convince you.
Exactly. Your so-called best friend is always going to be on your side in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's I mean, it's good that the AI has a lot of information that it is able to access and give to you in a certain way, but then again, like I said, it's not challenging your beliefs, it's not making you dig deeper into anything. And so with the current state AI is in, I think it is more likely to make people more dependent on these tools to just solve their problems and not go deeper into anything and not reflect and ask the uncomfortable questions, which is something that is not it's not ideal if you actually want
Mm-hmm.
real emotional growth.
And there's also the question of, okay, we've talked about LLMs and chatbots, but what about the other side of AI that's more of capturing data, reading patterns, giving you insights, giving you predictions, and in this case, the future of digital communication. Now, personally, if you ask me, like, what do you think the next 10 years of tech in society are going to be? I would say, yeah, definitely like LLMs, all that, that's going to keep growing. But I would say that the future of our digital interaction is going to be multimodal, where I think, yeah, definitely AI is going to be integrated in a lot of this sort of capturing information from all sides, from different parts of the world, uh, and bleeding into the physical, bleeding into the spaces, the 3D, the idea of a spatial computation, where the computer is not just something that's in front of you on a screen, but is around you, and it helps you, and it knows things about you, and knows where you are, it knows who you are, it knows what you're doing, and knows where you need to go. I think that the future of computation in general is going to be getting out of the screen and putting the screen in your world. And this is where, personally, like
Mm.
VR, AR, all of these ideas of just getting things out from the digital realm, the four corners of a screen and into a 3D world are definitely going to be the future. So how do you, like, when it comes to therapy, therapy is something that happens in a room, right? In a physical room. And so far, yes, like there hasn't really been any, no one has cracked the code to this, partly because of hardware limitations, but also because I feel like the idea isn't really mature enough in order to propose a system that would actually work for everything and everyone in the same way that, say, a smartphone does, for the idea of just a computer in your hand. or the iPod did before that of just 10,000 songs in your pocket. But when it comes to something like a process of therapy, do you think that something, for example, like in the future, let's say like 10, 15 years into the future, augmented reality analysis of just a person's movements, a person's expressions, even something like virtual sessions where, I don't know, like across continents, where there's this environment of shared space between a therapist and a client, and where the therapist has all of these metrics about, okay, how is this person reacting? This is what's probably happening. Like the therapist might have all of this real time assistant that's just analyzing all of this data. Like, do you believe that would definitely augment the professional? Or do you think that you should just keep relying on the human instinct and the way that things have been done? Because, I don't know, they might just end up confusing people.
I mean, I think there is still research being done about how different aspects that are recorded through AI of a person, say, like you said, like, facial expressions, and say, like, now there's like the tone of your voice can be analyzed apparently, and that's how like an AI model can predict if if you're going to go into a depressive episode or something like that. Those things can be helpful. I mean, I don't see how it could be unhelpful for a therapist to have that information. But what I do worry about, and this is going to be a little controversial, is the fact that where is this data going? Because
That's a good
as
one,
long as
yeah.
this data, if it's confidential and it stays with the therapist, just the health professional, okay, there's a lot that can be done with it. A health professional can look at it critically and see the spikes in your heart rate or see whatever expression changes and voice analyses and try to explore that more in the therapy session about like what was happening at that time, why did this thing happen, like things that maybe the client themselves would not have detected, and something that the AI picked on that could be explored further in the therapy session, and that's something that could be helpful. But if this data is also being recorded and it's being used in ways that, I mean, if it's being used to collect data on the general population in general,
Yeah.
so that could be a little controversial, because what if there's someone who has a high risk of depression, or someone who is, it just shows in your patterns that your health is more likely to decline. What does that mean in terms of getting health insurance, and in terms of paying
Yeah.
how much like premium on your insurance and accessing resources? I mean, is that data something that should be accessible um that way? I think that that's a bigger discussion that needs to happen. But if we're talking about just in terms of therapy, if it stays confidential and within the therapy setting, it could actually be quite helpful in detecting a lot of patterns that go unnoticed and outside of the therapy session that the therapist doesn't have access to either.
Yeah, I think the whole privacy issue is definitely something that's going to affect, and it already is affecting something as simple as your social media account and your social media messages, like whether or not, like who
Hmm.
has access to that, if something like a law enforcement or an army sort of special service gets access to it. So all of the whole, the privacy issue is definitely something that will need to be addressed. And I think, yeah, the main concern here is what happens when something, yeah, like an insurance company, like whether or not you get access to a service that uh, should, I would argue, be universal, gets conditioned by
Hmm.
something that a system says. And it's kind of like that Black
Yeah.
Mirror-ish dystopian world where we are determined by what tech thinks of us. But then that's also biased because, of course, who a person is and what they have access to is it's because of a lot of different systems that we've created. So like whether or not someone has money, whether or not someone has property, whether or not someone is related to X or Y or Z, whether or not someone comes from X or Y or Z country, Like all of those things are things that determine what a person has access to, and just adding a lot more to that is definitely gonna put a lot of people in a disadvantageous point, and
Yeah.
that's just gonna add to the issue of people being marginalized by systems.
Yeah. And that is something that needs to be thought of and discussed and researched on a bigger level as a society. And it definitely needs interdisciplinary research because it covers a lot. Yeah, that is one way that I see this field progressing towards as well. If we can look more into that research, we could get some valuable answers and we could see how this integration of AI and therapy can be achieved in a way that's ethical and safe for everyone.
Yeah. Okay, that was a really good introduction on the future of AI in therapy. Ishita, what do you think about going on a break? And we can go
That sounds,
into a little bit of a breather from this super serious topic of the future of AI and psychotherapy.
yes, that sounds like a great idea.
Perfect.
Welcome to our break, Unpopular Pour. This is where we share unpopular opinions about the topic that we are discussing and we react and discuss. Now, as someone who is in the field of psychology, this one would be, well, let's see how you react to it.
Okay.
But here is my hot take. I think that by promoting AI as the affordable solution to the mental health crisis, we are effectively building an empathy apartheid. We're deciding that the poor deserve a chatbot while the rich deserve a human, and we're calling that progress instead of what it really is, which is a surrender. Because everyone's talking about how AI is going to democratize mental health because it's cheap and scalable, but we're basically saying that if you can't afford a $200 an hour session with a human therapist, you don't get the biological complexity of a human being, but you get an algorithm that has been trained to mimic one. And we're creating the society where the wealthy get like a bio-authentic connection and everyone else gets a synthetic placebo.
Wow.
And the WHO also just released a report last month warning about emotional dependence on these systems, especially in lower income communities where there are no options. So if our solution to the mental health crisis is to give the most vulnerable people a machine instead of a person, we really haven't solved the crisis. We've just automated the neglect.
Fair enough. Honestly, I'm gonna have to agree with you here. And it's one of these things where I think a lot of things that happen in humanity are just echoed by past or even current issues. And I mean, you see it, for example, look at something like clothing or food, how, let's say, something like fast food could bring this argument of, okay, we are providing cheap, affordable food for everyone who wants it. So even if you don't have much money, you can still go and get, I don't know, a taco for $1 or something at our fast food joint. But there's also, like, you could also get a taco for $15 at another, like, place that tells you, oh, we only use organic avocados, no GMOs, no this, no that. And in the end, it's going to be a healthier version of that. Well, we have a lot of people depending on just cheap food that is not good for their health. So what are we saying there? We're saying that health, you need a minimum amount of money in order to be healthy. But I would say, okay, everyone has the right to be healthy as humans. Clothing as well, like, okay, we have cheap clothing that's affordable, but at what societal cost of sweatshops on the other side of the world, pollution, issues that in the end compound to something greater. So honestly, I have to agree with you there. I don't know if I mentioned this in the previous episode, but I was reading an article that analyzed how in this 2026, it's more of a status symbol to eat healthy and go to the gym and get your nails done than it is to get a designer handbag. So we are, like there's definitely some odd societal issue at hand here where we're, I think, talking about luxury in the wrong way. So yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you there, sadly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sadly.
but I mean, it's just
Well, I'm very happy
yeah,
that you agree with me.
yeah, but I
What
wouldn't
is
really know how
your
to, I wouldn't really
unpopular
know how to
poll?
solve it though. It's just a fact, and sadly, that's the way it works. Yeah. Okay. Anyways,
Yeah.
my unpopular pour, and I don't know, I think you're definitely gonna have to say, you definitely have something to say about this one. Is that attachment to an AI isn't pathological. For some people, like let's say AI is an LLM, for some people, it's the healthiest relationship they've ever had. So what I'm saying that's like for people who are in abusive relationships, in difficult environments, who have deep social anxiety, loneliness, people who like we keep saying, because we keep talking, oh, like a human is always going to understand you a lot better than an AI would. But what if the humans who are around you are, they're definitely not going to be helpful at all. They're going to make the situation worse. So my opinion is that for a lot of people, an AI system that, even with all of its biases and issues, could be better than the people they have around them. So the problem isn't really the attachment, it's the moralizing about what relationships are allowed to count.
I see where you're coming from with this, definitely, because honestly, having an AI chatbot that, and at the end of the day, maybe gives you much better advice than any human out there can, that would still be more helpful for you if you compare it to, say, talking to a person who is maybe not that emotionally intelligent or not that mature to understand what you're going through and give you some good advice or good supportive strategies to go through. But on the other hand, the attachment that we're talking about here, we're saying that this is probably the healthiest relationship that this person has in their life. But is it really a relationship if it's just one person and an algorithm?
That's a fair point.
And yeah. So while that could be helpful for them in terms of the information that they're getting, I still believe that they could benefit with some real human support that is healthy and safe.
Yeah, but in a world where we're constantly in this mental health crisis, where we see that a lot of people just in different groups and generations of our current society are facing the issue of anxiety, loneliness, doesn't that reduce the pool of people who would be able to provide an emotionally intelligent support, and increases the chance that an AI chatbot that's, again, maybe not going to be as complex and rich as a human would, it makes it likelier that it will be more helpful. So basically, like, if the pool of humans that would be good emotional support gets lower because of the increase in mental health issues and just crisis and other issues going around the world that affects people's emotions and psyches, doesn't that make a baseline LLM more likely to offer something that is useful?
Are you saying that, isn't an AI chatbot better than nothing in this situation?
Better than something that is actively negative?
It is. It could be, but that is what we're currently exploring, aren't we? That the AI tools that we're using, are they actually working or not? And it's all about, yeah, some human relationships in your life can be harmful. Maybe you don't have that support, but is the support that you're getting from AI also helpful, or is it something that's making you dependent on it? So it really depends on what kind of support you're getting from AI and what kind of model it is that it's using. Is it actually based on research, or is it just agreeing with you and making you feel okay about everything? Yeah. So I mean, yeah, it's more about what type of AI.
It might actually compound in the negative aspect of it, where you have people who definitely are not pointing you or are not supporting you. You feel alone, feel anxious, but then the AI is augmenting it in a negative way as well. So that's the flip side.
Yep, exactly.
Fair. All right, that was those were some really hot takes, and yeah, thank you for that, Ishita. This was our break, unpopular pour,
Thank
and we
you.
will be back with the last part of the last episode of our series, AI and Psychotherapy.
Welcome back to Espression. We are now going to dive into a discussion about the regulation, liability, and the legal aspects of using AI in mental health. Now, there's already some movement here, progress being made here, that digital therapeutics are getting formal approval from governments. So the FDA has already cleared apps like Rejoin for depression,
Yeah.
and that has an impact on insurance, prescriptions, and accountability, like we touched upon before the break as well. Now, in this situation, a question to ask is, if an AI chatbot gives you advice that is harmful, who is liable for it? Is it the platform? Is it the model provider? Or is it the clinician who's involved in the patient care? What do you think?
Yeah, I think with legal questions, you're gonna ask the same question to three different lawyers, and you're gonna get like five different opinions. So, uh, but it's true that a lot of these legislations are still being worked on. So part of the idea behind these conversations is also to inform and to bring about those insights that eventually will shape the future of what we decide as a society that we're going to value or not value, condemn and not condemn. The thing with, from what I understand, the legal conversation around the AI system is that accountability is a really hard issue to solve because you can't really sue the model because it's just an algorithm. You also can't really sue the creator of the model
Mm.
because not even the creator of the model decides a lot of what the model does. And it's just part of the way that the architecture of the system sits that a lot of these models, they're created in a way where even to their developers, a lot of it is A, a black box, B, trial and error. And then there's the question of then, well, who do you sue? Now, or who takes accountability for the decisions that happen? Now, personally, and this is going
Mm-hmm.
to be again, if you want to talk, if you want to say an unpopular poor hot take, I think I would say that we have to move past the idea of this blaming people for what happens in things. And I get it, like this is going to be like completely, lawyers are going to jump right now when I say this, but when it comes to a future where there's definitely going to be AI models involved in so many aspects of our lives, I think eventually it will become so that a person's work isn't exactly determined by what they do, but rather by using and manipulating the system. So I don't know, I guess my viewpoint is like a person is partially responsible, but ultimately it's just the way that things are. Like you can't blame the model, you can't blame the company. I do think that there has to be some like eventually, like for example, if I present something, if I make a presentation with an AI tool, then I am the sort of legal owner of everything that I say, and I am responsible for what I say. And so, like, in that sense, like, you can't really blame the system for doing something, but
Mm-hmm.
there still needs to be a person behind the responsibility of what's happening.
Yeah, I guess one of the things that really need to be considered in this context would be using AI tools in a very vigilant way, making sure that whichever human is using an AI tool, they are using it in a way that is informed, that is, there's surveillance, there's vigilance according to like how these tools are being used. And like going back to the question that I asked, that if an AI therapist gives advice that is harmful, who is liable for it? Well, if you can't really blame the platform or the model provider, the the clinician here also needs to make sure that the person who's using the AI tool knows what they're getting into, and the clinician has information about how the AI tool is being used, what kind of conversations are going on in there. Like I said, so the being more vigilant and being, more just keeping your eyes and ears open really and trying to pick up signs and pick up on information and make sure that things don't go downhill. But here's a question that I wanted to ask you, because you will know more about this. When it comes to AI models being designed for any specific purpose, how much testing is done in regards to safety and the impact it's going to have on, say, people or society or communities? Like, is there any kind of sociological
I
aspect
get it. Yeah,
involved in that?
because like eventually this will trickle down into the chance that that system will actively do something harmful. Now here, this is again this huge issue right now in the community because so there's some people that claim that there's not enough research being done in preventing all of the the wrong answers, the answers that might be harmful, that the hallucinations that might end up causing negative issues. At this moment, there isn't a clear framework, and I would argue that there won't be, at least for a couple of years. And
Okay.
especially because I think the development of these models is really fast paced. And the competition between the main developers of the models at this point is fierce. And so the big companies, let's say, well, OpenAI is the biggest one right now. Anthropic is the second. Well, I would say that they're almost on par with OpenAI right now in terms of the best frontier models, the top best of the best in terms of LLMs. And of course, applying the LLMs to other tasks and all that. But the basis of the model is it's always based on an LLM. And this is where sometimes it's important for the company's ethos to determine how much testing, how much safety, how much they prioritize safety. So in this sense, Anthropic is definitely, and from the start, they've been really clear that they make safety a staple of their mission. So I would say that they're definitely the best ones in the industry. So the Claude models I'm talking. So Claude is, Anthropic is
Right.
the company behind Claude. They provide comprehensive
Okay.
reports in terms of safety issues. They make a lot of, what I think what I like the most about Anthropic is that they not only focus on the technical aspects, but they also focus on the what ifs in terms of how it affects people. On the other hand, I think OpenAI is more focused right now on, well, their survival in the sense that they're facing some issues in terms of finance and all that. And so right now they're trying to move really fast in order to keep up with the competition. I mean, everyone is moving really fast, but the argument is that this moving fast and breaking things makes it so that we have issues like the one we discussed in the previous episode about 4.0 with GPT 4.0, where they make a change because they're like, oh, first instinct is this going to be better for our users, but then they realize that it has some unintended psychological consequences that we're still dealing today. So there really isn't a clear framework. Like, just to answer the question, there really isn't a clear framework. Some companies are better than others. There's still things that slip through the cracks. There's still a lot of debate and criticism towards the companies that are involved in developing these models. There's also this whole world of the Chinese companies, which are a little bit more secretive in their processes and what they do. So there is testing. Like, I'm not gonna say that these companies are just overlords who just want to get anything out the door and control us. but definitely there's still a lot of work to be done there. I would say Anthropic is definitely the best one here, though, in terms of their clarity, in terms of what they do. Like they're really clear about what they do and how that might ultimately affect a lot more than having a higher performing model, but actual people.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say like that's the blueprint that we need
Yeah.
if we want to include this in something as personal as therapy.
I mean, considering how AI is almost entering every field at this point, I think teaching AI literacy is something that should, I personally think that it's something that should be
Exactly, yeah.
included in in your educational curriculum, because, and also, I mean, people who are behind developing AI as well also need to be more aware of social issues and, say, emotional, the emotional side of everything and how it's going to impact people, communities, their identities, but also considering how vast AI is, and it can be seen in almost every field now. I think it is definitely something that can be included into programs. And I think I've heard of universities now becoming more accepting of
Mm-hmm.
it and also including modules on the use of AI. I know universities that are using AI in psychology programs as well, and how to ethically use it in psychology and to use it for your own benefit. I mean, I didn't have that module, so I'm not entirely sure of what actually is in there, but it is definitely good to hear that the sort of integration of AI into formal education is happening. And if it's informal education, there will be more research on it, there will be more informed decisions being made on it, and
Definitely.
that will
Mm-hmm.
definitely reduce the unfortunate situations we get into where AI does something harmful and then we don't know where to look at for liability. So I think that way training programs would really
Definitely. And I
help.
think that even beyond, like, it will be something like knowing how to use a computer. Like, a lawyer goes to university to study law, and no one's going to teach them how to use a computer. They already know that they shouldn't, like, what they should do, what they shouldn't do, how to manage their files. Like, it's kind of expected that you should already know how to use this machine,
Yeah.
even if you're in a field that has nothing to do with understanding how the machine works. But you need to at least have the ideas and the concepts on how to use the thing. So I think it will be something like that. It will not be, well, I mean, of course, there's going to be a transition period where there's going to have to be formal courses. People, like, everyone, like, I even include myself in this, like, we didn't grow up in an AI world. People who are in, I would say, Gen Alpha, I think it's after Gen Z, uh, they are growing up in an AR world.
Yes.
We aren't. We didn't, sorry.
Yeah.
So it was still new for us. We're still learning. We're still in that process. Eventually, people will grow up in a world where this just becomes ubiquitous to them. And so you should know how to use this, what to do, what not to do, what to. I think it will be
Yeah.
like one of those skills that people will be expected to have moving
Mm-hmm.
forward.
Yeah. I think you're right about that. Like basic computer skills, I think AI can become one of those things because of how vast it is, how fast growing it is, and also how helpful it's proven to be in a lot of different fields. And you're right about Gen Alpha growing with AI as well. I mean, they've grown up with AI companions as an actual social
Yeah,
category. It is not something that is completely weird for them. And there's also been recent studies showing that about one third of teenagers have chosen an AI over a human for
well,
serious
okay. Not
conversations because
surprised.
the
Not
AI
surprised.
is judgment
Judgment
free.
free though, that's yeah, okay,
Yeah,
that's I mean,
I
depends, I
think
guess, but yeah,
it.
I would say that's one I can see that because I think and especially recent models have focused a lot more on and again, I think Claude is definitely the better one here where they and I've noticed this as well, like they usually don't give you a straight up answer without making you at least consider others. And I think this is where it goes back to the popular poor question, because it's like, I think sometimes when you ask for advice to someone, they're really clear on what you should do. So, like, should I quit my job and look for something in this field? You ask this to 10 of your friends, and most of the responses are going to be either a yes or a no. Either no, you're crazy, or yes, leave that. While I think that the focus on especially the latest text models has been on not just sticking with one thing, but you present, like, the LLM will always give you a solution as like the main, okay, this is what I think is the best one. But they will always include the other options, at least as hints. And I think that's also sometimes
Yeah.
that I can see how if you grew up with a companion, you would think that that makes it a little bit more fair.
Yeah, I mean, it could be helpful in providing a full picture in a way so
Exactly,
that you
exactly.
have
Yeah.
all the information and every point to consider. Even if the advice seems to be leaning towards one side, you at least have all the points in front of you. But this is also somewhere like we need to make sure that the advice that the AI model is giving, or say, not just the advice, but like in terms of every kind of fact they're throwing out or the information that they're giving out, is based on research that is representative of diverse views, diverse populations, because AI models are like a lot of other psychological research. A lot of the research is based, unfortunately, on weird populations, and weird is an acronym that stands for Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic societies. So it is research that comes from these particular societies. And what is important to remember is that the world is made up of a lot of different cultures. There's lots of different languages. There's lots of different indigenous frameworks. And if we're using AI, this is something that needs to be taken into consideration when doing research, when coming up with the way the algorithm works. And that is something that the tech side,
Yeah,
I think,
definitely,
needs to
definitely.
be
That
educated
part,
on as
like
well.
you mentioned, that acronym, yeah, that's something that is really being discussed in the community that focuses on the investigations behind bias in AI, in how the systems, the viewpoints, the ideas, the beliefs are, because remember, these things are trained on data, and a lot of the data that we have comes from sources that are quite focused and concentrated on one side. And this is the part that I think is going
Yes.
to be hard, definitely moving forward, in terms of how do we bridge those gaps and how do we make it inclusive for everyone. I think, again, no one has really cracked the code with this as well. And there's still a lot of issues. Like, for example, I remember there's a book called Data Feminism, where they mentioned that with the image generation models, and if you ask them to generate a pattern that's based on Islamic art, they will generate something that is more similar to they will generate something from the perspective of data that's in museums of what Islamic art is. And most, like, the data that comes from museums comes from Europe, the US, all of these like huge databases that they have of their structures, of their different objects and patterns. But Islamic art is a lot more than just what's in the British Museum. But because the AI has a lot more data that's provided by this source, that's curated by, again, a whole history of European colonization and just what they chose, then this is
Yes.
what is defined for people who ask this supposedly super smart, overseeing overlord that knows everything. What is Islamic art? They get something that just keeps promoting that viewpoint instead of being inclusive and being comprehensive. So yeah, that's definitely an issue going
Yeah,
forward, and
definitely.
that balancing act needs to be done, as well as making the model smarter. reducing those biases is definitely a huge engineering
Yeah.
problem and social one as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and if we think about the future now, the big future that we always come to at the end of an episode. Well, I feel like there's two possibilities of the future of AI and psychotherapy. The first one would be that AI makes therapy abundant and also preventive, given that it records your data and, like, you know, predicts stuff, um, such that the whole category of mental health crisis shrinks. But then there's another future possibility that AI makes emotional outsourcing, which is something we touched upon last episode as well, so easy that we see a generational drop in
Mm-hmm.
resilience,
Mm-hmm.
attachment skills, and tolerance for human friction. What do you think? Which one's more likely, or do you think both of them would be likely in some way?
I think your unpopular report made me kind of reconsider the reality behind all of this because, to be honest, I think it will ultimately depend on where in society you fall. The counter argument to
Mm.
this is okay, maybe these systems will allow us to create or replace our systems with something that's more fair. But we, like, again, like, we'd have to overcome a lot in order to reach that sort of utopian idea of AI actually solving the world's problems. I do think
Mm-hmm.
that both have a merit. Like, AI will make therapy and will augment, like, it will augment psychotherapy to be more helpful. It will help therapists to more accurately diagnose and track patients. But on the other hand, like, again, as
Mm-hmm.
you said, like, if these systems, how are they designed? What do they prioritize? Are people going to go for the quick, easy route rather than the friction one? That because even right now, like, as you mentioned last episode, like, it's sometimes an issue of I'm afraid of confronting this which is within myself. And so when you go for these shortcuts, it's when ultimately you end up compounding the issue and it makes it worse. It's kind of like, again, social
Mm.
networks. There's this promise of, oh, you can connect with your friends, with people around you, people who share the same ideas, the same beliefs, the same goals and interests. But at the same time, there's this flip side of, but then you can become isolated and then you can lose your emotional, psychological intelligence skills, soft skills, as they call them. And it's the other flip
Mm-hmm.
side that's still.
Yeah,
So yeah, I think it's definitely not a simple issue.
definitely not. I think if, like we've mentioned several times throughout this episode and the earlier episodes as well, that if there's evidence-based solutions being pushed for in terms of AI and psychotherapy, there's a lot that can be done in the field. As long as we're making informed decisions, we're thinking critically, we're having these conversations, and we're making sure that we are trying to reduce harm as much as possible, I think there is a great possibility that AI can help reduce the mental health crisis that's ongoing
Yeah,
in the world. However, there is also a lot more support that's needed for the profession of psychology in general. There's more research that needs to be done, there's more funding that needs to be provided to empower more people to be able to pursue the field of psychology and mental health and become mental health professionals. And that is also something that I personally think should not be sidelined,
definitely, definitely.
um, because
Mm-hmm.
now we have AI. And yeah, I mean, keeping our minds open and thinking about how our actions are shaping us and future generations is always going to be helpful in terms of integrating AI with supporting our mental
Perfect.
health.
Yeah, I think this kind of goes well in line with our closing phrase, which is what we want to end this series on. which is that the future of therapy is the person who knows how to use AI to become more human. And I would add even a little bit to that phrase, which is that the future of any domain right now is the person who knows how to use AI to augment and sort of find that humanity behind every process and every state. So that's
Yeah,
my
well said.
take, I think. And I think
A hot
that would
take.
be, that's a really good way of ending the episode in the series.
Yes, we hope you enjoyed our AI and psychotherapy series. This is the end of our last episode on AI and
We will
psychotherapy.
definitely make more episodes, more series on AI. And we'll just I know it's a pretty popular topic right now, so definitely a lot to talk about. So stay tuned for that.
We've reached the crema, the final distillation of our series on the digital couch.
This journey has shown us that the future of mental health isn't a choice between human intuition and computer code, but rather how they will work together.
While tech holds the promise of spotting mood patterns before a crisis happens, we also have to face warnings about emotional dependency and the fact that most AI is trained on data from a very limited Western perspective.
Ultimately, AI is a mirror that reflects how we use it. If we treat it as a quick shortcut to avoid the uncomfortable friction of self-reflection, we miss out on real growth. But if we use it carefully to help us spot blind spots in our thinking, it becomes a powerful assistant.
The main takeaway of this entire series remains simple. The future belongs to the person who knows how to use AI to become more human. Thank you so much for tuning into this series. As you log off today, keep your boundaries firm, your personal data safe, your critical thinking sharp, and your real-life connections close.